I want to give my brief reaction to the blowout election in France. Marine Le Pen gets blown out in the French election by Emmanuel Macron. Emmanuel Macron is a first-time office holder. He is the youngest president of France, the youngest leader of France since apparently Napoleon Bonaparte. He won 90% of Paris. He blew Marine Le Pen out. She's the head of the National Front. She ditched her association with the National Front going into the election cycle. A lot of people, including President Trump, were excited about the possibility of Marine Le Pen because she is very harsh with regard to the borders. Instead, she gets absolutely walloped. She loses 65 to 35. The polls were skewed, but they were skewed actually in Marine Le Pen's direction. The pollsters didn't want to be surprised by Marine Le Pen, so instead they were actually oversampling, apparently, her crowd. A third of French voters spoiled their ballots or abstained. They didn't like either of these two choices. And the big generational gap is basically Le Pen ran even with Macron. Among young people, among old people, he blew out Marine Le Pen. What does this election say? So there was this weird idea that nationalism all over the world was on the rise, that nationalism all over the planet was on the rise, and that you were going to see nation after nation following the Brexit model, following the Trump model, and they're going to elect nationalist leaders. Now, normally, that only happens in opposition. Historically speaking, the reason you get nationalist movements is in opposition to other nationalist movements. So, for example, in Europe, you saw the rise of a lot of nationalist leaders during the 1930s because there are lots of nationalist leaders arising. So what that means is that if you have a German nationalist leader coming to the fore, then it's a good shot that you might get a British nationalist leader coming to the fore in reaction to the German nationalist leader. Nationalism tends to breed nationalism in other countries, just as internationalism tends to breed internationalism in other countries. But the French election was not going to be a reaction to Trump in the sense that they are going to now effectuate some sort of national stand against Trump. In fact, if there was any Trump effect to this election at all, which I really doubt, if there was any, it was a nationalist reaction against Trump by electing someone that Trump didn't like. You see the point? So here's the problem with reading too much into this election cycle. It is not a rejection of nationalism wholesale. It's a rejection of Marine Le Pen, and it is a rejection of the old order. Remember, Macron was not running associated with any party, and Marine Le Pen was running with the National Front. The two historic parties that have won in France are the Socialist Party, the sort of Francois Mitterrand party, and then the Conservative Party in France, which was never all that conservative. Francois Fillon was the candidate there. Both he and the socialist guy ended up being ousted in the first round, so you had two newcomers running against each other, and that I think is the common thread that holds together Britain and holds together America and holds together France in sort of the electoral trends. I don't think that there is a coherent program from any of these countries. I don't think there's a coherent right-wing movement that is now on the rise anywhere. I think what you're getting instead is just a reaction to, we hated what came before, give us something new. Give us something new. Whether it's David Cameron and get rid of that guy and put in Theresa May, or whether it is Barack Obama and we hate Hillary Clinton, so get rid of her and put in Donald Trump, who's completely new, or whether it is we're sick of Francois Fillon and we don't want Marine Le Pen because she's a little too scary, so put in Macron because he's new. I think there is this reactionary feel about politics, that politics is failing, and therefore we need someone new in place, and Marine Le Pen was just too scary. Now, I also think that on the left, it's too much to suggest that Marine Le Pen was ousted because of her border views. I don't think that's right. I think she was ousted because she has this long-standing history with the National Front, which scares people, rightly so, because the National Front is historically an anti-Semitic party. She's moved away from that because she wanted to win an election, but historically they were an anti-Semitic party. Her father was a deep-rooted anti-Semite that she had to condemn, and so I think that there is the possibility, every possibility, that if there were a conservative candidate in France who came along and were not Marine Le Pen and said we need to do something about all of the immigrants who are swamping us, particularly from Islamic countries, I think that that person might have a better shot. Marine Le Pen was just too off-putting. And so that's the result. It sort of suggests what might happen in the United States. If there are any sort of ramifications for the U.S., it would sort of suggest in the United States that if there were somebody on the left who were willing to make a nationalist argument and not be an old fuddy-duddy like Hillary Clinton that no one likes, that they might have a shot of knocking off Trump, because Trump is sort of a Marine Le Pen in the sense that there are a lot of people who dislike him. He has very high negatives. If there was somebody from the left who were not so scary but were a fresh face and were willing to express, sort of co-opt some of Trump's language, then Trump might be in trouble in 2020. So that's the only thing that I'll say about the Marine Le Pen election. I don't think it's earth-shattering. I don't think it's a massive win for the left. I don't think it's a massive loss for the right. I think that Marine Le Pen's a scary character for a lot of people, and and she was not the best candidate for the right, but the right is on the move just because new stuff is on the move, and they haven't seen anything even remotely right-wing in France. Plus, by the way, she's a socialist. I mean, the fact is that her domestic policy is big government socialism, anti-trade socialism. So the idea that it was sort of right versus left in France is not really true. It was nationalist left versus internationalist left, but nationalist internationalist left, if that makes any sense. A sort of nationalist France that says, our common character is to be internationalist.